GEOG-1130-001, Human Disruption at the Coquitlam River by Francesca Mihudi. For my project, I chose option number 3, which was to map and discuss issues associated with an environmentally sensitive area. The area that I chose is a section of the Coquitlam River, and I specifically wanted to go see what impact humans have on the salmon as they continue their journey upstream. On November 5th, I went to the Coquitlam River that runs through Gates Park. I walked along the Poco Trail, and I entered the forestry at the Maple Street entrance. As I was walking along the river, I noticed an abundance of people walking alongside me. At one point, there was a bald eagle flying above the river, as well as many seagulls surrounding it. The first human impact I noticed was that many people were trying to take pictures of the bald eagle, and while doing this, they were stepping outside of the trail and walking over all of the vegetation, damaging it. Also, as people were stepping off the designated trail to walk down slopes to get to the river, they were holding on to trees and branches to try not to slip down the slope, causing the branches to break off of the trees. This is a photo of the map I drew outlining the specific location I went to watch the salmon. As I was walking along the trail, there were trees that had fallen down in a shallow part of the river, creating a path to get to a little island in the middle of the river. This island was a fairly flat surface. The island was filled with multicolored river rocks atop a bed of sand, and there were shrubs and grass in between the rocks. I noticed many types of vegetation, which I will talk about later in the video. On the other side of the island, on the opposite side of the trail, there was a mix of red alder and vine maple trees. They were quite tall, and there was good sunlight exposure for the trees. These trees were all along the trail that I had walked along as well. As I was walking around this small island, I realized that I didn't have an exact idea of the length of this island, and I wasn't sure how I would go about knowing the exact length. I then remembered that I had a measuring app on my phone. I started by pointing my phone at one end of the island, and I screen recorded myself walking from one end to the other. This is a fast-forwarded version of that video. Once I got to the other end, my phone showed me that this island was 53.61 meters in length. I believe that this length and size of the island was big enough for me to observe the vegetation and what kind of disruptions were happening along the river. The first key observation that I made as I was walking along the trail to get to the river was the amount of garbage that was all along the trail and outside of the designated trail, in between bushes, close to the water on the ground, and in the water. This has a huge impact to the environment and is caused by humans alone. All of this garbage is a choking hazard for small animals such as birds and squirrels, and it ends up in the river, causing pollution to the water and harm to the fish. None of the garbage that I found was decomposable. I had seen quite a few plastic water bottles and plastic candy wrappers in the river and on the trail. I also noticed rubber from various flip-flops as well as a few balloons on the ground. There were also a few metal cans along the trail, which can end up injuring the small animals. Most of the ones I saw were broken in half, and this can cause injury to other people that are walking all along the trail as well. I'm not sure of the cleanup management that the city of Port Coquitlam does, but I would assume that it is impossible to pick up all of the garbage being left behind all of the time, as most of this garbage is all along the trail, sometimes off of the designated trail, or had already ended up in the water and was making its way upstream along with the salmon. I downloaded an app called PlantNet on my phone to identify the plants that I had seen along the trail as well as on the island. With this app, I was able to take a picture and it would identify the exact plant that I was taking the picture of by using the leaf or the bark of that specific plant or tree. The first leaf that I had identified was this one. Even though it was browning along the edges, I was able to use the app to take a picture and identify that this leaf had fallen off of an alder tree. These alder trees were all along the trail that I was walking on, as well as opposite the trail that I was looking at from standing on the island. These trees were very, very tall, and you could see that they had been growing for quite a while and were quite old. The second leaf that I had identified was this one. I knew just by looking at it that it was from a maple tree, and the PlantNet app had confirmed this for me. This specific tree is from a tree that was on the edge of the island that I was on, but these trees were all over the trails as well, mixed in with all of the alder trees. This is the next plant that I had identified. This specific plant was not anywhere on the island, but it was all along the trail. Using the app, I had identified that this was a Japanese knotweed. This is a picture of ivy. This is something that I have seen many times before along almost every trail that I have walked along, and was easy for me to identify by looking at it. Using the PlantNet app, I was able to see that this specific type of ivy is called English ivy. This was all along the trail that I had walked on, leading up to the small island in between all of the alder and maple trees. Along my walk of the trail, I noticed this plant, which after using my PlantNet app, I noticed that it was a huckleberry plant. This was the only vegetation that I had seen that had flowers on it, even though there were only two, and you could tell that they were dead and about to fall off. This is, of course, because it is now fall, so all of the flowers have started to fall off, and the leaves have started to fall off the trees as well. As I was walking along the island, I noticed that there were many patches of grass. These patches of grass were quite small, and they were usually along the edge of the island. There was also a few patches growing in between the bed of rocks from the sand. There was also a big maple shrub on the edge of the island. As soon as I got to the island, I noticed that I wasn't the only one there. There were two fishermen that were there casting for salmon. I witnessed one of the fishermen catch a salmon and reel it into shore. The salmon struggled on a bed of rocks with the hook in its gill for multiple minutes until it eventually stopped moving as the fisherman tired the salmon out. The fisherman intentionally waited for the salmon to lose all of its strength, and then he proceeded to take out the hook and throw him back in the water. The salmon was interrupted through his long journey, and as he was already weak and tired out from this, the salmon was in shock and he struggled to swim upstream and continue on his journey. I think that since the fish is already fighting to swim upstream, he should not have to struggle against this human. I had never seen something like this done before, and I think that this is quite inhumane. I think that this is a huge human impact that is being created on the salmon trying to continue their journey. Another key impact that I noticed was this fishing twine that I found in the rocks left behind by the fishermen. Birds can swallow this twine and they can choke and die. This twine can also end up in the river, wrapping around the fish and killing them as well. It can also possibly cause plant or tree disruption for something trying to grow. I think that a better solution for this would be if people are going to continue fishing for salmon, I think that there should be a law made that they have to use biodegradable twine so that it does not cause any harm to any animals or plants. Another observation that I made was that I saw a dog running into the river. This dog was in the way of the salmon's path. Although it's natural to have predators in the river, domestic dogs are not the natural predators for salmon that should be there. A dog could possibly try to catch a salmon, causing it harm, and it is just another obstacle for the salmon to overcome on their journey upstream. In my radius of the river, some parts were fairly shallow. Therefore, I got to witness the salmon up close. I noticed that they have rough scales and very sharp teeth. I watched how they interact within their species. I noticed that they themselves are an obstacle to try to overcome on their journey upstream as I noticed these two salmon fighting each other. Just because the salmon were the most visual species there that I saw that were being impacted by humans, it doesn't mean that there are not more species being disrupted because of humans. Species such as birds, like seagulls or eagles, squirrels, or bears are all impacted by things that humans do. I really enjoyed the experience of watching the salmon swimming upstream, and it was an eye-opening experience to see the different types of impacts that humans have on the salmon as well as other species and all of the vegetation in this area. I think that there are many things that we as humans need to start doing better. We need to start taking better care of the environment and all of the plants and animals in that environment.